Welcome back. You are still watching Nile TV and this special edition regarding the celebrations by tens of thousands in Cairo Tahrir Square and other squares in the other governorates of Egypt, marking the 3rd anniversary of the 25th of January revolution. And to be talking to us more about the contrasting image of Egypt between today and yesterday, we have here in the studio Dr. Mehna, the political analyst. Hello, Dr. Ahmed.
Good evening and thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for being with us today in Nile TV here in the studio. Dr. Ahmed, what about the contrasting image that we have seen in Egypt, especially in Cairo and in Giza, on Friday and today?
While seeing the Egyptians going out a large number, it's a great indication to the rest of the world that what happened in June 30th is definitely a people's revolution.
Yes.
Overcoming the fear and proving that the Egyptians are the source of all legal actions and political actions in the political sphere in Egypt as well.
Yes.
And also proves that the Egyptians are supporting the future map. So definitely it is a great indication, and what we need to do now from this point on is to start working to move Egypt from the current state to a definitely better future in the next few years.
Does this mean that terrorism was defeated again today?
Definitely by the liberating the will of the Egyptians in going out, supporting the future map, definitely beating the terrorism and saying that they are behind the army and behind the police force. Despite whatever happens of terrorist attacks against the Egyptians and against the police force, definitely the Egyptians are behind the army and beating it again.
So what about the countries that are supporting terrorism here in Egypt and supporting the terrorist brotherhood organization, the International Brotherhood Organization, and of course its branches here in Egypt, in Sinai, and in other parts of the country? Of course, we have today seen another explosion in Suez, in the governorate of Suez, and yet the people of Egypt went out in Suez and celebrated the 3rd anniversary of the 25th of January revolution, and they did not care about any explosion, they did not care about any idea of terrorism.
The Egyptians have really responded strongly against any media attacks from other countries, particularly Qatar or Turkey.
Yes.
Yet today, and even during the whole week, they are saying that yes, we are behind our army and behind our police force, and yet proving to the rest of the world that they are anti-terrorism, and saying to these countries, we will continue with our future map. So yet it is again another embarrassment to these countries. But what I need to say is that Egyptians shouldn't really worry about what happens in the rest of the world in terms of media. There is a role that the government needs to play, particularly the media sector and the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs, to try to explain the right image here in Egypt, saying that the Egyptians, or explaining to the rest of the world that the Egyptians are behind the army in the June 30th revolution and they are supporting the future map. So I think more work needs to be done on that particular area.
Yes, Dr. Ahmed, we're being joined by Rahma Zainuddin, our colleague in Tahrir Square right now. Rahma, can you hear me? Rahma? Rahma, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Rahma, would you tell us more about the situation, the current situation in Tahrir Square, and what has happened throughout the day?
Sure. Well, what's happened throughout the day is that basically when we first arrived, we didn't expect the large number of people that we are witnessing here at this moment, and the number started accumulating at around 3, and we've had large numbers, thousands hitting the square, a number that was not expected following yesterday's bombings. We have chants for the army, chants for the police, chants for the January 25th, and also for the June 30th revolutions. We've also had chants where people denounce terrorism. So that has been the mood. The mood has been very festive throughout the morning. As I mentioned before, security in the morning was very tight. We even had female police officers searching people coming in. Throughout the day, of course, because of the large number, the very unexpected large number, security was not that tight. We've had also an interesting program put in place. We have a main stage in the square where there are musicals. Unfortunately, just a few moments ago, some people, but this is something that is expected when you have such large crowds.
Yes.
Things can the organization can lapse very quickly. So what ended up happening is that people started jumping onto the stage.
Yes. Rahma, we have heard about minor clashes that took place nearby to Tahrir Square. Did this affect by any way or any means the number of the protesters or the Egyptians who are coming to Tahrir Square to be celebrating the 3rd anniversary of the revolution?
See, again, this is what's interesting to point out. We've had the bombings yesterday, and we've had clashes around Cairo, central Cairo,
yes.
Today. And we've even had something interesting, which is the 6th of April movement clashes with brotherhood elements.
Yes.
Also interesting, we had that in Mohandisin, but that did not deter people from coming in, and also the large number of female turnouts, which is also important because one would assume that families would try and stay in because of the security breaches, but we have children, we have mothers, we have many people pouring into the square. When we actually ask them, aren't you scared? What about the security situation? What about the occurrences prior? They stated that's all the more reason for them to come to the square. So that was also quite different.
Yes, Rahma, we do know as well that the Egyptian women really participated in large numbers in the 30th of June revolution and, of course, the recent constitutional referendum. And, of course, you have spoken to some of them on the square today. Why are they coming in big numbers to the square or Tahrir Square today?
Interesting, you should ask that. It's like I told you, they feel it's a duty almost. What we're having, the army helicopters hovering above is helping with the spirits. They're stating that it's easy for them to mope, to sit at home, to sort of succumb to such terrorist actions. It's almost, one woman is interesting enough to state that it's almost like having an abusive spouse, that
yes.
you should stand up to abuse, you should stand up to terrorism, that this is all the more reason for them to hit the square. Bear in mind, many of these women were not actually planning to come. But then once these events happen, they've stated that now strategies are different, whether you're pinpointing it on the Brotherhood per se or on other extremist movements. They state that at the end of the day, you have to stand up to either. Unfortunately enough, many of them are worried because they've stated that beforehand, we used to have these acts outside in the governorates. We had seen a sort of strategy change where the attacks were happening in governments outside of Cairo, and now we're seeing them tune back into central Cairo. But then again, they're stating that the best way to fight terrorism, is not the large security apparatus or the deployment of so many officers, but the Egyptians themselves. And that's why we've had Egyptians step in with the organization of Tahrir Square, because as they stated as well, they understand the economic repercussions of having these acts. They understand that these movements are trying to sort of exhaust our security apparatus.
Yes. Rahma, of course we do know as well that the Brotherhood, the terrorist Brotherhood organization, have launched maybe initiatives as for a reconciliation with the Egyptian people. How does that respond to them by the Egyptian people in the square right now? How do they respond to that?
It's not really interesting you should mention that also. What ended up happening is that you've had some Brotherhood elements reaching out for reconciliation. Many of the Egyptians, unfortunately, though nothing was conclusive out of pinpointing that it's the Brotherhood per se, as I've stated, that is in charge of all of these terrorist attacks, what they ended up stating that nonetheless it was ousted President Mohammed Morsi who released many of these jihadist elements or these members who are part of extremist groups. They've also stated that in that sense, because he's done that, there must be some kind of agreement between both of them. The Brotherhood, when they were in power, were obviously trying to appease these extremist groups so that in return they can be part of their militia, or rather their muscle man, so to speak. So they're stating that although even if it isn't the Brotherhood, what is happening is a repercussion of Morsi's rule, and therefore they should be banned in total. So for reconciliation to happen now, it must be given some time, because people are angry, people are frustrated, there's a lot of resentment, especially because bear in mind that although they did come out with stating that they want reconciliation, many Brotherhood affiliated websites had started inciting violence 48 hours before the bombing attacks. So that being said, this juxtaposition, or rather this contradiction in their statements is confusing people. People believe they're not transparent, that they're not serious about reconciliation, and therefore stating that it's too soon.
Yes, Rahma Zainuddin, our colleague in Tahrir Square, thank you very much for being with us today. Dr. Ahmed, back to you. About the Brotherhood organization and the initiatives for a possible reconciliation, as they called it. As an Egyptian citizen, how did you see that?
We need to differentiate between a mistake and a betrayal. What the Egyptians, the Muslim Brotherhood committed against the Egyptians is not a mistake that I can forgive. It is a betrayal. Betrayal of the Egyptian political image, betrayal of the economy, a betrayal of the trust that the Egyptians have given them in the two elections, the presidential and the parliamentary elections. So therefore, I don't think they deserve that kind of reconciliation. Reconciliation when there is a misunderstanding of certain concepts. But this is not a reconciliation. They are deliberately trying to damage Egypt, deliberately attacking the police force that protects us, deliberately trying to dismantle the Egyptian army, and they are deliberately involved in an international plan to dismantle the spirit of the Egyptians and breaking them into smaller society. And to really help in overcoming that, I would like to focus on, today, when we're celebrating the third year of the revolution, we need to work in three main directions to avoid falling in that trap again. Number one is the political system, the economic system, and the social system. Economic system is about opening up the government to new projects, etc. But I'm mainly focusing on the social system. Now, we are building towards a new democracy. And for us to achieve that goal, we need to train Egyptians on how to act in a democratic manner without being in a chaos system. What we've experienced in the last 3 years is a chaos. It's not a democracy. People have misused the concept of democracy to doing whatever they can in a wrong way that indirectly or even directly it damages the image of the country.
But Dr. Ahmed, there is always this third party, all their hidden hands that were messing with most of the political events which took place in the past 3 years. And afterwards, we do know now who was the third party or the hidden hands.
That's right. There will be always a third party. Egypt basically occupies the best location in the world. It's in the middle of three continents. It controls a number of resources that the entire world is in need to, like the natural gas, Suez Canal, and on top of the other projects that we've started, there will be a major need from Europe to Egypt, particularly in energy. And that's where I'm saying that we need to train Egyptians on how to respond to these involvements or ideologies. Now, the problem what we have in the current political system is that do we have a proper democratic model for the Egyptians to follow? We don't. Do we have proper democratic thinkers in the political sphere? We actually don't. And we also don't have the democratic culture among the Egyptians. And the reason for not having that particular democratic model is that Egyptians have always been marginalized in the last 30, 40 years. So they were always governed by fear. And I think the advantage of January 25th and June 30th revolutions is that Egyptians have broken the barrier of fear. They're not afraid anymore. But here it is a fine line between not being afraid and being able to act for the benefit of the country without having to be neglectful or even cause major damage. So I think that's where we need to start. And I would say that for us to build a proper education, we need to start from the house. Now, in building the political loyalty or the loyalty to Egypt overall, these three phases starting from the house,
yes,
going into the school, and then going into university, and also taking into account the political or the digital political culture like Facebook and others.
yes.
The problem with what we have in Egypt at the moment is the house side. The problem with building that loyalty and understanding of a political system with a child before, from 2 years up to 7 years,
Yes.
It is greatly important that we need to explain to parents how to educate your kids on understanding the surroundings, how to help them to face or reject ideologies that are against Egypt.
There is a lot of families going on, fathers, mothers with their children waving the flags of Egypt.
That's right.
So
that's the start.
this is a step.
That's a start.
Yes.
Exactly. And the problem with that phase, 2 to 7 years, it is characterized by authoritarian style. So the kid or the baby basically takes the information from parents without actually discussing it.
Yes.
So if I say to the kids, don't believe Muslim Brotherhoods or love the CC, they will take it as it is.
Yes.
So here, that's what we need to start with kids. As soon as they start talking, we need to tell them what is a flag, what is a policy, what is Egypt, what is the pyramid. And that's how we can get kids to grow slowly, having that loyalty and sense of ownership over their life in Egypt.
Yes, Dr. Ahmad, we also know that today millions of Egyptians went out on the streets to be marking or celebrating the third anniversary of the 25th of January revolution. But we also know that this is a message of appreciation to the armed forces and the police as well.
Absolutely. The armed forces and the police force have really sacrificed a lot of their men and tools to protect the January 25th and June 30th. And as you said earlier, we now know who's the third party. They're trying to damage Egypt all along. But we also need to be owners of that revolution. We cannot keep relying on the police force. I've heard some criticism to the police force saying, you know, how did that bombing in the in front of the building in the Cairo
Security Director.
That's right.
Yes.
It spent three days trying to get somebody out to look at the car. We cannot keep criticizing them. It's normal. You know,
it happens everywhere in the world.
Exactly, and we've got millions of cars, so it's really difficult for them to control every single car. So we need to be realistic on how we criticize. Here, it is a sense of ownership I'm talking about, that the Egyptians themselves shouldn't really wait for the police force or the army to move. They should move. So the Egyptians, seeing cars parking in front of the security director, no, why are you parking here? So we need to take that initiative to protect our countries rather than relying.
And we should also start criticizing the terrorists.
That's right.
The extremists.
That's right.
The ones who are committing these crimes and
That's
not
right.
the one who are defending
Exactly,
us.
exactly. So we need to start, and that comes with understanding.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, of course, we do know as well that 7 people were killed today in clashes between so-called protesters and other residents or the police forces in Egypt today. Did you think that these clashes were inevitable? They were going to happen anyway because the Brotherhood organization was not going to be standing still while millions of the Egyptians are on the streets?
Clashes always happen between parties that have that strong spirit to protect their own ideology. And that's how we need to look at it. Muslim Brotherhoods are going out believing that what they're defending is right.
Yes.
And also the citizens believing that the Muslim Brotherhood are totally wrong. And that's where the clashes start. So again, we're putting the police force in the middle to trying to separate people. But what I think, the citizens shouldn't really take the law into their own hands. They shouldn't really attack them because that's not what this is all about. They need to report to the police and at least try to calm down because we don't want more damage. We don't want more people to die. So clashes are, unfortunately, we cannot avoid because they happen everywhere. And the difference here is that we're trying to protect people by making or helping them to understand the ideologies, and slowly we'll get these people to understand. And if they don't understand, we're not going to go into reconciliation because you're damaging the country.
Yes, Dr. Ahmad Mehna, what about the role of the Foreign Affairs Ministry after the June 30th revolution? Do you think that they're actually doing their best to be conveying the true image of the Egyptians and the true image of the 30th of June revolution and the true image as well of the Brotherhood organization, the terrorist Brotherhood organization, to the world? And if that is what is happening, does the world believe that this is what is going on here in Egypt, that Egypt is fighting terrorism and Egypt is fighting the terrorist Brotherhood organization?
I'd like to answer this question from being an Egyptian that lived outside Egypt for 18 years in Europe. Foreign Affairs Ministry is doing a bad job. And Foreign Affairs Ministry is one of the places that needs to be totally reformed. Do we have qualified people in Foreign Affairs that represent Egypt and being able to put the right image for Egypt? We always hear about Egyptians being humiliated outside Egypt at the airports and in different countries. And here, I can criticize the Foreign Affairs, they're not doing a good job. So going back to the question is, are they doing a good job after June 30th? No, they're not. We are not really able to capture the attention of major media centers or channels or even newspapers. And up till now,
the question is, do the foreign media outlets want to believe that the Brotherhood organization is a terrorist organization, that Egypt is fighting them? Or
a lot of them actually don't want to believe, and they
yes.
still, that's right, because they serve the ideology. Like Al Jazeera, for example, they don't want to believe because they're serving a particular ideology. But the rest of the world, at least we can embarrass them. 2 days ago, there was a report came out from the Amnesty International saying, you know, that the Egyptian police force and the army are not really, or trying to convince people to vote with yes. Now, we need to have a strong response to that. Where have you been when human rights were violated in Iraq and in Syria? Why are you keeping attacking the Egyptians? And here, we need to understand that the international law is not binding. It's just, you know, some recommendations, but it's not binding. So what I need to say is that the Egyptian Foreign Affairs Ministry needs to be stronger in its response and need to create more and more seminars at the embassies outside, trying to explain to the rest of the world. So here we can embarrass them and get their citizens to respond to them. Now the question is here, how the Egyptian embassies overseas. We've got 187 embassies overseas. What are they doing to protect the revolution of the Egyptians? What are they doing to try to capture the attention of the international media channels? And don't think they're really doing anything. And the media sector in Egypt as well. And one of the good things I find is Nile TV and a number of other channels to actually try to explain the image. But I think the Egyptian embassies overseas need to do a lot more to protect the image of Egypt and explain to the rest of the world.
Yes. Another important point that you have mentioned is the human rights organizations, because they seem to be working whenever they want to be working, and they seem to be monitoring things they want to be monitoring.
That's right. So
not just in Egypt, everywhere else in the Arab world.
The report that came out was the night before the bombing of the security directorate, and we haven't heard anything from them.
Actually, we had 4 or 5 bombings yesterday on Friday, not just one.
That's right.
And all the human rights activists and the other former officials at the state, they keep on tweeting about things that are not happening in Egypt. But whenever something that is happening and attacking the armed forces or the police institutions or any other institution in Egypt, they just keep silent.
That's right. So, and this here is the role of the official media of Egypt, foreign embassies and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as well as the Prime Minister. He needs to do a lot more. I thought Dr. Biblawi, during the Davos conference, would talk more about the security aspect, trying to explain to people the image. Egypt is going through the future map successfully, and it will continue to go successfully.
Dr. Ahmed, as well, we do know that a metro station was attacked today by the Brotherhood members, the terrorist Brotherhood members, after fleeing from the police forces. Do you think that we'll be witnessing a number of attacks in the coming days, or it will be weakening?
It will go less as long as Egyptians take control. Egyptian citizens, I mean, take control. If you find anything that is suspicious, you need to report it as an Egyptian. So we cannot keep relying on the police force. And we find that a lot of bombing have been avoided because the Egyptians have reported them to the police force. So we need to take control of our own destiny. We need to help the armed forces and the police force report whatever we find suspicious. So as long as we take control, it will be less. But if we just keep relying on the government and criticize them, it will continue.
Yes, as we can see right now on the screen, we have images from or footage from Tahrir Square, but we do know that other millions of Egyptians went onto the streets in other governorates of Egypt as well. Does this represent the unity of the Egyptians that the Brotherhood organization failed to destroy in the past years?
That's right. They did something good, the Muslim Brotherhood. It actually helped the Egyptians to unite.
Yes.
And I think that's what we need to start working on and build towards the future from that unity. Help each other, love each other, and have that sense of loyalty towards Egypt and build for the future. So I think we need to take from that celebration that spirit to build the Egyptian future, and we need to start working harder to build Egypt. And that's the best celebration that we can give Egypt as the mother.
Yes, we did talk about the Cairo Security Directorate bombing which took place on Friday, but we do know as well now, after the prosecution went there and inspected the place, that it left a hole of 27 meters on the street itself.
That's right.
This is a very important thing. How did they actually manage to be going on the streets with a big amount of bombs?
The same thing was captured in Port Said a week ago, about 750 kilograms.
Yes, al-Dawahi
that's
area.
right,
Yes,
from the Dawahi
yes.
area. I think this is not the Muslim Brotherhood alone. There is other parties that play along, international systems of supporting that with money, logistics, trying to break down Egypt and bring the Muslim Brotherhood into force again. So that's why we will continue to see more violence, and that's because the international system is not going to submit to the fact that the Egyptians are now united and spelled out the Muslim Brotherhood. They will continue. And the only way to face that
they will
is
be
to
continuing to try to get
They will continue
the
to try.
into
They will continue to try, and we will see in the presidential election, that's my expectation, in the parliament election, they will continue to try to break down that spirit and create that chaos in Egypt to prove to the rest of the world that the armed forces and the interim president and interim government are not able to run the country or rule it. But we will continue to support. As the British say, it has to get worse before it gets better. So definitely what we're going through is normal, and that's why we shouldn't be pessimistic of what happens now. We should be optimistic, because it means that everything is just going out. All the bad things that accumulated over the last 3 decades are all coming out now, and Egypt in a year or two will definitely be the mother of all countries.
Yes. Regarding the roadmap of the future, which was led after the ousting of Mohammed Morsi on the 3rd of July, we have accomplished setting a new constitution with an overwhelming majority of 98.1%. Right now there is a debate about whether we'll be taking on the presidential elections first or the parliamentary ones. In your opinion, which one will be first?
Looking at the understanding of the Egyptians to the political system and how we vote and what are the criteria to try to select the right people, I would go for the presidential election first. We still are not fully qualified to elect, and we shouldn't really be upset of that. We've never been educated on democracy. We've never been trained well as Egyptians. So I would say, based on our circumstances, the presidential election should go first, and then followed by the parliament election. And that will also help, because looking at the parliament elections, you've got a couple of thousand people across all provinces that will be participating. I'm talking about the candidates.
Yes.
And if you start with that first, it really becomes very hard for the police force, especially that they are facing terrorism and also the terrorism in Sinai.
Yes.
So I would say start with the presidential election, having a president, and then from there start setting a proper system for the elections of the parliament. They will be more ready for the Egyptian system.
Speaking about the security situation here in Egypt right now, and of course after we have seen millions of Egyptians going out on the streets harmlessly, peacefully, celebrating the 3rd anniversary of the 25th of January revolution, do you think that we are in a good situation in terms of security or securing Egypt?
Definitely. Egypt, the government is taking control over the security situation, definitely, and they're doing a great job, and I need to thank the army as well as the police force. But there will be always things that slip out, always, because we had a lot, probably about 13,000 people that took citizenship, by certain rules of
under the rule of Mohammed Morsi. Yes.
Mohammed Morsi, we got more than 200,000 people that came into the country. So there will be always things that slipped out. You never know who is really participating. And the suicide bombers, I don't think they are Egyptians. I believe that they are foreigners from the people that Morsi allowed into the country. So we shouldn't really be
And most of
worried.
them are Palestinians as well.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. And I think Egypt, or the army, Egypt rather than the army, needs to send a strong message to Hamas that if Egypt lifts its hand from the Palestinian case, you will be faced with Israelis, because we can withdraw. Definitely we can. We can withdraw from the treaty, because the peace treaty of 1979 has a clause, a large clause on how Egypt controls the western part of Gaza.
Yes.
And I believe at some point Egypt needs to threaten Hamas that we can withdraw from that treaty and we'll make you face Israel man to man, and we're out of it. And if you ever step into our land, we will burn the entire western part of Gaza.
Yes,
So
this is a very important point, because the armed forces are are in an ongoing war against terrorism in Sinai, to be particular, not in other governorates. The police forces are handling the attacks that are going on in other governorates, but in Sinai it's all up to the armed
second
forces.
army. Yeah.
Do you think that we are winning that battle, that the intensity of attacks regarding or concerning or targeting the armed forces are actually less and less every day?
To be absolutely fair, terrorism in Sinai did not start with Mohammed Morsi. Terrorism in Sinai started with Mubarak. Because a lot of these tunnels, going up to about 1,200 tunnels, a lot of terrorism or terrorist spots in Sinai go back to 17 years. So it means that Mubarak did not do a good job in controlling security measures or putting or enforcing security measures into Sinai, opening at the borders between Egypt and Gaza, and that's where drugs come in, weapons come in. And I think that's one of the cases that Mubarak needs to be prosecuted on. What did you do to Sinai? Because what the second army is fighting at the moment is terrorism that goes back to more than 17 years. Yes, the Muslim Brotherhood has benefited from the terrorist spots going into Sinai.
Yes.
And here we need to ask a question. Mubarak, you took the country in 1981 absolutely clean. Why did you not develop Sinai? Why is it empty for terrorists to run around and build army, if you like? So going back to your question, yes, we are winning the battle, but we also need to understand that we're facing a large number of terrorist groups that are fully trained, and they have weapons that even anti-aircraft missiles.
Yes.
Now, how did it get in? So at some point, the army needs to send a strong message, and my expectation is that we need to probably attack them on the border to prevent them from sending weapons in. But have we really managed to close all the tunnels? We've got over 1,200 tunnels that we're in Sinai leading to Gaza. Some of them are actually able to take trucks going in with goods. So we're definitely winning the battle, and we are behind our army until we clean Sinai fully.
Yes. One more thing about the terrorist brotherhood organization is that they are targeting the Egyptian culture as well as the Egyptian tourism. But yesterday, on Friday, they targeted, of course, the Cairo Security Directorate, but nearby there was the Islamic Art Museum.
That's right.
Yes, they are targeting the Egyptian culture as well. They're trying to destroy the Egyptian culture as well. How do you say about that?
Muslim Brotherhoods do not believe, because they don't believe in countries or political boundaries. They believe the countries are across the world. And that's why the Islamic Museum means nothing to them. The Islamic Egyptian culture means nothing, or the Christian Egyptian culture means nothing to them.
Yes.
And that's why we need to explain or understand about the Muslim Brotherhood. They don't believe in nationalism. So what they are attacking, believe that it's part of their animosity. So we shouldn't be really worried about what they attack, because that's how they behave. What I'm really concerned about is, I hope the Egyptians have learned in the past year and a half that ideologies or people that protect ideologies are people that fail to mobilize citizens based on nationalism. What we need to understand as Egyptians is that we are the nationals of Egypt, whether they're Muslims or Christians. We need to support Egypt irrespective of their religion, ethnicity, or race. And that's basically, and in a different episode, just quickly,
Yes.
The Muslim Brotherhood played on a religious ideology. And we always believe that religious states and authoritarian states fail. Authoritarian state is what we had during Mubarak, and the religious state also failed. And if we're going back to the Middle Ages, 12th centuries in Europe, we find that the Europeans have really started their revolution against the rule of the church, which basically gives us a great lesson that religious states will never work. So we shouldn't work on a religious state, because Prophet Muhammad's state in the beginning of Islam was never a religion, was a civil state. So we are building towards a civil state, and that's why we need all Egyptians to gather and start working towards a civil state, Christians and Muslims, for the future of Egypt.
In statements today, President Adli Mansour also said that prisoners were released in the era of the ousted President Mohammed Morsi. We do know that. And he added that they are mainly based in the Sinai Peninsula. This shows what he wanted to do, that former president.
That's right. He was preparing the liberal army, as they wanted to call it. He knew his end is coming. And that's what he was trying to do, is release as many prisoners as he can, especially the leaders that can train people on using weapons and sending them out in Sinai. And I believe, or I want to believe, that the intelligence agency of Egypt was aware of that. And I think they were aware, because they were immediately prepared after the outsetting of Morsi. They were prepared, securing the entire country, protecting the Egyptians as much as they can. Yes, few things slipped out, but yes, Morsi was preparing an army to fight the Egyptians. That's why he was saying, and a lot of their supporters were saying, that we will burn out Egypt. There will be cars, bombed. There will be weapons, etc. So
and they tried that.
That's right. That's right. So whatever they said on TV was actually true, because they were preparing for it.
All the threats that they have made by the leaders, Mohammed ibn Taghi, Safwat Higazi, Assam al-Aryan, and of course Mohammed Morsi.
All of them, because they were preparing for it. They knew. They knew that's going to happen, and they were preparing for it. But I think the army was 10 steps ahead. And that's how they protected the Egyptians.
And the awareness of the Egyptians, the normal Egyptian citizen, actually,
very
it was the main
sometimes.
force to be kicking out the Brotherhood organization out of Egypt.
And also gives us another indication that the people that said, or they were protesting against the Egyptian rule in Egypt, were the Muslim Brotherhood. That's 6 or 7 months after January 25th, saying, we don't want the soldiers to rule us. And that was the Muslim Brotherhood, because what they're trying to do is dismantle the army and get the Egyptians to clash with their own army, wipe out the security force or the police force, and having the Egyptians to clash with their own army, as it happened in Libya and Syria. And immediately they will be...
And it's a grand plan. It's not just for Egypt.
That's right.
It's for all of the Arab region.
That's right.
It has happened in a lot of countries. And still, some of the so-called Egyptians are trying to battle with the army.
I don't believe that a lot of people don't understand. I believe that a lot of people understand, but they're still very complacent and antagonistic about, believing in that they were wrong. Sometimes, people are proud to say, yes, we were wrong. But unfortunately, the time has passed, and we will never actually give you the opportunity to dismantle our army, because Egypt going out to Mena, the first pharaonic leader, we always walk behind our army. Egypt is a military country, and I don't mean that we should be ruled by the army. I actually prefer Admiral Sisi to remain as the defense minister, because he's the great warrior of Egypt, and he's always going to be the backbone. I prefer him to help us find a proper president, help us build the institutions in Egypt, and be a civil state and remain as a defense minister. But that's on a side point. But I want the Egyptians to start reading about our history. We've always, as Egyptians, always been behind our army, always behind our army. Pharaonic dynasties over 4,000 years, Amr ibn al-As, and all the rulers after him, we've always been a military country, and we always walk behind our army.
Yes, Dr. Ahmad, you said that we need a president, or we need General Sisi to be commanding a president with a proper background or a proper culture of being a president. What is the main characteristics that you want to be available in your next president?
I'll just go back to your statement. If we look at Nasser never had that experience, because a lot of people say, you know what, we need somebody with experience to be a president. Nasser was never an experienced man. He was 36 years. You know, he was a captain. He was never really a man with experience in a political sphere. What we need is somebody that loves Egypt, somebody that is able to plan, and somebody that has a vision. I love Nasser, and what I love about Nasser, he had many mistakes. But what I love about Nasser, that he had a vision. What I love about Sadat, he had a vision. Mubarak never had a vision, because Mubarak received the country or ruled the country in 1981, and we actually going back backwards since Mubarak. If you look at the dollar, was almost equal to the pound. Now it's you know, dollar is 7 pounds.
Yes.
So Nasser had a vision, and if you have a vision, you will always achieve miracles. So what we need for the next president is somebody with a vision that is able to plan and put the right people in place. I'm really disappointed on the performance of the current government. People are old. People are, you know, old-fashioned. They have no idea about modern plans, about how states are run.
Still, it's an interim government, and it was a really hard time to be picking anyone to be going in such
right,
circumstances.
but they need to give the opportunity to the youth. You know, Clinton was 45 years. So if you look at Clinton, never had the experience as a president. So I think we need to change our culture of how we choose
maybe
people.
we need as well to be encouraging the youth.
I think they are encouraged, but they don't have the opportunity.
They don't have the opportunity.
They don't have the opportunity. If you look at the official posts now in government, the minimum probably about 60 years old. You know, so they've never given the opportunity, and that's what we need to do: give them the opportunity and have a second line or third line. And that's one of the problems of Mubarak, and on that he needs to be prosecuted, because he killed the leaders in Egypt. At the moment, I cannot understand that we are a country of 90 million people. We cannot say, you know, here's 5-6 people that can run the country. We don't have. And I think that's what we need to do now, is building second and third generation to be the leaders of the future.
Yes, but in the Ministry of Youth, we do know that we have one youthful figure, which is Khalid Talima, the assistant to the Minister of Youth. That's a start.
That's a start,
Yes.
definitely.
But we need to be having more and more of them.
Give more opportunities, open the door for them. And a lot of them have projects for Egypt in the future. And I mean, the second crossing is one of the projects that it's been with the Prime Minister for 7-8 months. He's never read it. So that's what we need. Give youth the opportunity, because they have the vision. Old people, I think they are used to the old system of governance, and the system has changed. Now Facebook can break a country.
Yes.
So we need to understand.
It did break a country.
Exactly. Yes. So we need to get people on board that can deal with modern technology and have the new vision for Egypt post.
So tell us more about the second crossing.
Second crossing, basically, started 3 years ago after January 25th, looking at some of the projects that can actually be implemented in Egypt. And with every project, I found a lot of other problems. So you find there is problem in the administrative system that I need to deal with it. So it grew up. It's been 3 years, and now it's with Dr. Biblawi, it's with the Minister of Defense, it's with President Adli Mansour. It basically, it is the vision of Egypt for the 21st century. Starting from redesigning the provinces, allocating resources, reform of the administrative system, political system, and also having in the end 10 years plan for every province of Egypt, and also includes the 18 mega projects in Egypt that have been introduced in Egypt in the last 200 years to be implemented.
And hopefully we will be implementing this and more in the future. Dr. Ahmed Mehna, the political analyst, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, and happy revolution.
Thank you very much. And this brings us to the end of this special edition of the coverage of the 3rd anniversary of the 25th of January revolution. But stay tuned, for the top stories will be coming your way in 5 minutes' time.